The National Film Authority reinforces producers' licensing for film classification. Is that the right way to go? Well, there wouldn't be the need for advocating for strong policies when you want a strong film industry. So, well, we'll delve more into this story. And also, there is the development of the story that China has finally decided to reduce the number of American films, not just Hollywood films, but American films into their film market. We'll be delving more into that story and what it really means for the entire world. Well, I'm Papa Otu, and this is the Film Mandate. Stay tuned. Welcome back to another episode of the Film Mandate, episode 16 of the Film Mandate. Sorry, episode 17 of the Film Mandate. And today we'll be talking about stories that are in the atmosphere concerning the Ghana film industry, and also the China film industry. And today we'll be bringing to you a bill that already exists, or would I say an act that exists in the Constitution of Ghana, and the Film Authority have decided to reinforce its implementation. And on this very channel, I've always been advocating for strong policies for the film industry, and for there to be a strong advocating for film policies to help the industry, there is the need for perhaps the existing bills or policies that exist to be indeed reinforced. And I think perhaps there is an interest that we need to take in the bill itself or the act itself and how it impacts our industry. So we'll be delving right into it. And there is a publication, pardon me, that was published in on the Three News website, and also a statement released on the official Instagram page of both the General Secretary, that is Madam Kafui Danku Picha, and the National Film Authority's official Instagram pages. So we'll be reading both quickly and then have a brief discussion on it before we move on to our next story. So on your screen, we have the Three News website, and it reads: Content classification will require film producer license from May 1st, NFA. This is a publication published by Raphael Garthe, their entertainment reporter, which was published on the April 14, 2025 at 8:34 a.m. Then your short is Madam Kafui Danku Picha, the NFA Executive Secretary. So I read briefly. The National Film Authority, NFA, has reminded all stakeholders in the film industry, the Ghanaian film industry, that as stipulated in the Development and Classification of Film Act 2016, Act 935, all films intended for public exhibition in Ghana must be classified by the NFA. The authority, in a statement by the Executive Secretary, Kafui Danku Picha, said no person shall exhibit or cause to be exhibited a film unless the film has been passed and classified by the NFA. This regulation aims to streamline, develop, and uphold standards in Ghana's growing film ecosystem, and applies to feature films, short films, trailers, TV series, documentaries, adverts, and any audiovisual content exhibited in cinemas, on television, online platforms, or in any public space. According to the authority, effective May 1st, 2025, a new enforcement measure will be applied to the film classification process. NFA declared that every producer submitting content for classification must hold a valid film producer license issued by the NFA. The producer license is not only a legal requirement, but also an important step toward streamlining the industry and ensuring accountability, quality, and structure in content development and dissemination. The NFA therefore urges all film producers, emerging and established, to obtain or renew their producer licenses well ahead of the May 1st, 2025 deadline. Only licensed producers will be permitted to access the film classification process from that date onward, NFA said in its statement on April 7, 2025. How to get licensed? Producers can begin their licensing process by visiting the National Film Authority's official website at www.nfa.gov.gh or by contacting the NFA Secretariat through classification at nfa.gov.gh. The NFA called for a collaboration among stakeholders to build a vibrant, responsible, and world-class Ghanaian film industry that respects both creative expression and the rights of audiences. Yes, so this is all about the Ghana film industry, and I must say, I know it's arguably, but I must say it's a step in the right direction. Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, and yeah, let's take a look at the exact, what do we call, the exact statement made by the NFA's executive secretary on their official Instagram page, and then we'll proceed with the discussion afterwards. So this is the exact statement made on the 11th April 2025. And it reads, National Film Authority mandates producer license for film classification effective May 1st, 2025. In accordance with the Development and Classification of Film Act 2016, Act 935, the National Film Authority reminds all filmmakers and exhibitors that all films intended for public exhibition in Ghana exhibited a film to be sorry exhibited exhibition in Ghana must be classified by the NFA. A person shall not exhibit or cause to be exhibited a film unless the film has been passed and classified by the NFA. This regulation aims to streamline, develop, and uphold standards in Ghana's growing film ecosystem and applies to feature films, short films, trailers, TV series, documentaries, adverts, music videos, and other audiovisual content exhibited in cinemas, on television, online streaming platforms, or in any public space. Stakeholders are to note that effective 1st May 2025, a new enforcement measure will be applied to the film classification process. Every producer, distributor, or exhibitor submitting content for classification must hold a valid film producer, distributor, exhibitor license issued by the NFA. Kafui Dankun Pitcher, Executive Secretary of the National Film Authority. Yes, so this is the exact statement made by the Executive Secretary, Madam Kafui Dankun Pitcher, with regards to producers or exhibitors to have a valid license before submitting a film or an audiovisual piece for classification, regardless of where it is going to be exhibited, particularly in the cinemas or on television. And I think this is very interesting because it looks like we already have this act in existence. And I remember some about 2 or 3 years ago, I did indeed apply for a film to be classified, and yes, it was classified as well. And I must say that yes, it's the enforcement of the laws have been in progression, and I'm glad that the full extent of it is being done. Why would I say I'm glad? Because there is the need for a very standardized film industry that does not damp its quality. And we've all been crying for a quality film industry. And in talking about a quality film industry, this is one of the measures that have to be put in place, particularly when there is the need to know whether the one involved works or is part of the film industry. So it means that if you want to actually get involved in an industry, particularly when you are not really in the mainstream, it means that you have to be qualified as an individual who works in the industry by acquiring the license. I don't know in which form or way it will take. I must admit, just to clarify, I'm not being authorized by the NFA or whoever who is part of the NFA to do this story. I am doing it of my own as a film reviewer or a film industry person who is passionate about the film industry. So, yes, there is the need to be regulations, just as an individual wouldn't get up and then start driving a car. To drive a vehicle, you need to have a license. And even to drive a particular vehicle, there's the need to have a specific license that allows you to operate as such. So I think it's necessary for if there is an as has been shown actually in the act that Miss Madame Kafui Danko Picture stated, there is an existing act. So if there is an existing act that mandates filmmakers to actually acquire a license and to be able to classify a film and then exhibit, then there is indeed a need for it to be implemented, because if you want to run at a very fast pace and catch up with the rest of the world, such classifications or such, sorry, acts ought to be implemented quickly and gotten out of the way for us to focus on the some of the existing challenges that may be in our film ecosystem. And I indeed agree with this, because there are times that perhaps films may be exhibited at places where the question may be, the films being exhibited, is it by the right license licensed producer or exhibitor? All these need to be clarified. So my hope is that it wouldn't just be a matter of producers having the right license to exhibit or exhibitors having the right license to exhibit these films, but the question is that, are these films being exhibited, do they have the authority to exhibit these films in the first place? So yes, a producer may have a license or an exhibitor may have a license, but then I think it should even go further to ascertain who is the um, right license holder or rights holder of the film being going to be exhibited or showcased on television. And I'm saying this because in time past, there used to be some entities who would exhibit productions that clearly you wonder whether these authorities or these licenses or entities have the right to actually exhibit these films or these television series or documentaries or whichever artificial production that may be. So indeed, it is. I believe that in implementing this and being it's been enforced is going to help curb any form of piracy that may exist in our industry. Because if you want to have a very robust industry, piracy is one of the things that ought to be dealt with. And then also any illegalities that is not needed that may in turn hurt our industry ought to be dealt with. I know that it may not be entirely thorough due to perhaps limited infrastructure, or yes, the right word may be limited infrastructure. But as a whole, once this is implemented and perhaps the stakeholders involved, involving all filmmakers or company owners whatsoever, if they see the benefit of it, I should think that would indeed encourage more filmmakers to go in this right direction. My only concern is that after May 1st, can producers still come and then register for the license? Or after May 1st, you have to wait for another year before you can acquire this license? So that is what is not so clear in the statement. So I am hoping that perhaps with time, these for, statements will be clarified so that that will be made possible. My only challenge or brief, my only concern is the fact that when you go to the official website of the NFA, you tend not to have some of the fields that requires, or the I would say the buttons that require you to register fully activated yet. And that is where I'm a little concerned about, because if the deadline of May first have been given, then the question would be, shouldn't the button for registering be actually ready for use? So that is where my concern is. I don't know whether I'll be able to show it on the site as it stands. So let me see if I can show. Yeah, so and well, they've stated clearly that we shouldn't go ahead and register yet. So I'm sure it's still a work in progress. Yeah, it's still a work in progress. So I am hoping that that will be sorted out as soon as possible, so that there isn't a rush for it. But the good thing is this: I like the fact that they're breaking it down into categories, so that depending on whichever category you belong to, you would know which amount to pay and all that. So yes, as it can be seen on screen, it is a test mode, but they have provided the necessary fields to input your credentials. Input your credentials. So it is a test mode, but I'm hoping soon enough, since the time is not too far off, it will be activated fully for that to be made. I don't know whether the license or the form actually costs $5. I don't know. So I'm sure in due time it will be clarified. However, for those who are interested and want to go ahead and register, they provided their email address so that you can submit or a request for you to be attended to. And I'm sure even if you have their contact number, you can easily call and make more inquiries for you to have or acquire the film licensing. And yeah, I think it's indeed a step in the right direction. But on the side too are other licensing that one can acquire. So yeah, if you go to the application page, they even have film permits and film classification, film accreditation, and all that. So there is more I believe the NFA would be implementing, and my my hope is that it will be done in a timely manner so that it doesn't cause a rush to the NFA office or even portal to for people to be registered. Otherwise, it may cause a serious traffic to their website, which may not function on time for filmmakers or film producers to acquire their licensing. So there's a lot to be seen on the page. As you can see on the screen, there is even quotation for the cost for registering as a foreign company or a co-production company who may intend to shoot locally, and the fee for it is $100. And I think for local productions, the fee for it is $200. If I'm not 200 cedis, pardon me, 200 cedis. So I think it's also reasonable towards the local filmmaker, so that the local filmmaker is not overburdened. Yeah, so there are a lot of implementations going on, and I'm glad that is being adhered to. So if, as you can see on your screen, you have a category for those who are going to register for film permits to shoot in the country. So whether you're a foreigner who is coming here to shoot, or you are a local entity by co-producing a film with a foreigner, the fee for uh, the film permit is also indicated there for the filmmakers and also for the local producers as well. So I'm glad that yes, it's also being incentivized for the local production personnel so that they are not overburdened financially. And also, depending on where you want to shoot, you may also necessarily require a permit to shoot at the very various locations needed. Yeah, I thought of covering that as well, since I'm already doing something about permits or for licensing. So there's a lot you can find on the NFA website. I know not all the fields are activated yet. I hope that will be done soon for filmmakers to do the necessary registration in order not to be in be in trouble when they have to exhibit a film as soon as possible. So, yes, I think this is a step in the right direction. It may not be pleasant at first when we begin when these operations or these things are being reinforced, but it is necessary for the cause of a good film industry. I am for a good film industry, and I'm happy that due consideration is also being given to the local filmmaker so that he or she may not be overburdened with unnecessary or costly fees. So, yes, this reinforcement of producer licensing to be able to register for classification is indeed a step in the right direction. Yeah, so now let's go to our second story. And this has to do with the tariff war that is ongoing between the United States of America and China. As more of the tariff war actually affects everyone globally. But then China decided to respond to the enforcement of that tariff. And yes, that is what how they responded to is to ensure that American films will be reduced. That's the quota of American films coming into the Chinese market will be reduced. And that is the response, or what that is the decision the China Film Authority or administration have decided to go about it. And this has been published in the Hollywood Reporter, an article by Abid Rahman and Patrick Brzezinski. So I read, China to reduce imports of Hollywood films as trade war escalates. The China Film Administration said it would moderately reduce the number of American films the country imports in response to Donald Trump's tariffs. It's official. China is set to reduce the number of Hollywood films it imports in its response to an escalating tariff war with the US, and will look to increase film imports from other countries. The China Film Authority, CFA, the body that handles film releases and quotas in the country, released a statement on Thursday in response to a reporter's question about whether the Trump administration's increasing tariffs on China would impact imports of American films. A spokesperson for the CFA said that the US government had made the wrong move to abuse tariffs on China, and that the situation will inevitably further reduce the domestic audience's favorability towards American films. The statement added, "We will follow market rules, respect the audience's choice, and moderately reduce the number of American films imported. China is the world's second largest film market. We have always adhered to a high level of opening up to the outside world and will introduce more excellent films from the world to meet market demand." The move to reduce American film imports comes as Trump increased tariffs on China to 125% on Wednesday. China hit back on Thursday with tariffs of 84% on American goods. On Tuesday, reports from China suggested that the country was mulling a ban on a reduction on the number of Hollywood films. Speculation had increased after two widely followed Chinese public figures, one an editor for a state media outlet, the other the son of a former party chief, released identical outlines on Tuesday of countermeasures Chinese authorities were said to be considering in response to Trump's tariffs, and their outlines included sorry, a ban on reduction of imported American films. Under the most recent trade agreements, China committed to releasing 34 foreign films per year under revenue share streams, with overseas studios permitted to a 25% share of ticket sales. The news of the reduction appeared to catch many in the Chinese film industry, particularly local exhibitors, by surprise. According to sources, China's Film Bureau had just approved on Monday Disney and Marvel's Thunderbolts for a theatrical release on April 30th. It's now unclear whether that release will go forward. Exhibitors in contact with the Bureau told The Hollywood Reporter that they were optimistically awaiting positive news about other upcoming US releases, including Apple's Brad Pitt starring racing movie F1. China's theatrical box office has staged a strong recovery this year from a severe downturn in 2024 when total ticket revenue declined 23%. The turnaround in 2025 has been profoundly though top, top heavy though. As of Monday, theatrical revenue for the year was up 42% compared to the same period in 2024, but virtually all of the gains had come from just one film, Beijing and Light's animated sequel, Neza 2, which has earned a record smashing $2.1 billion since its release during Chinese New Year in late January. The popularity of Hollywood films has eroded drastically in the past several years, but top US tentpoles can still occasionally bring in substantial revenue. In 2022, Avatar: The Way of Water made $246 million at the China box office. Warner Brothers and Legendary Entertainment, a Minecraft movie, opened to 14.7 million last weekend, and local theater chains were banking on the summer slate of tentpoles like James Gunn's Superman and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning to help fill seats and keep the market recovery going. Even with Hollywood's diminished state in China, the film business is one sector where the US maintains a sizable trade surplus with its geopolitical rival as Chinese films, despite their enormous earnings in the home markets, have made little headway with mainstream North American movie goers. Yeah, so this is China's response. They have finally decided to indeed enforce this response of reducing Hollywood films or American films in general in the Chinese market. The question is that what does that mean to the entire world? First of all, let's talk about the reduce of Hollywood films in the Chinese market. Just as I discussed in a previous episode, the China being the second biggest market for films, indeed, if they take such decisions, it affects generally everyone, particularly the Hollywood film industry, who seem to want a bigger penetration into that market, or has, I would say, compared to other film industries in the world, have a larger market than any other. And so, yes, it will in a way affect the bottom line, although the American film market is the biggest in terms of sales, box office sales. So, yes, the current events of the pandemic affected film industry worldwide because the challenge has been that most films are exhibited in the cinemas, and most often than not, these exhibition in the cinemas offset the cost of film production and marketing. So for coming to the year 2024 and 2025, there's been an uptick in the box office sales, which is good for every film industry worldwide, particularly for the bigger markets of China, America, India, and even Nigeria. So for Hollywood to receive a cut down of their films in the Chinese market will be of a greater concern, particularly to the film studios in America, because that would mean that it will affect the bottom line of the amount of money they make off films. And that indeed may be very, very worrying. I remember discussing in the previous episode that when that affects the American film industry, in turn, it has a drawback effect on every other film industry, particularly in the communities or countries where Hollywood films actually do their productions. That would mean that they are likely to reduce the cost of production in order not to make losses when perhaps they go exhibiting the films worldwide. So, but that we wouldn't really know till the once the implementation takes place and the films are being exhibited without China's involvement and it affects the box office returns, then we would know for sure how the turn of events will go about. So it is indeed something that is worth discussing. But for the rest of the world, what does it mean? Because if China's decision is to allow just 35 foreign films to come into their market to be exhibited, depending on the quota of films they take from America, does it mean that the rest of the slots left will be given to other foreign film markets to bring in their films to be exhibited? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. And I'm saying this, or I'm asking this question because does it mean that it gives opportunity for other film industries, perhaps even from Africa, to have the opportunity to exhibit their films there? That's the question we need to ask ourselves. So yes, I wouldn't want the American film market to be affected in any way, but we live in a global village, and I'm hoping that a lot of markets would allow the opportunity for other film industries to exhibit their films in their markets as well. So my prayer is not for Hollywood films to be reduced in China necessarily. My prayer is that perhaps China may increase the quota of films that they invite into their film market so that other film industries will also benefit. But with the advent of this happening, does it mean that they will allow other film industries to exhibit their films in the place of the number of Hollywood films that won't be allowed into their market? Those are questions perhaps the leaders at the helm of the film industry, perhaps even in Ghana, should take a critical look at and perhaps start engaging with the China Film Administration to see whether films that meet their requirements can be admitted into their film market. Perhaps they may not even want to exhibit them, but if the quality in the film meets their standard or their expectations, there may be considerations as a result of what is happening in the world at the moment. So I hope there will be some negotiations so that the Hollywood films will not necessarily be reduced, but there will be mainly considerations for an increase in the admission of foreign films into their market. So, and the Chinese film market is really huge. If you talk about the entire gross for expected or projected gross for this year being over $30 billion, and China being the second market, you could imagine how much money China can generate for a film. So with these negotiations going on, I'm hoping that the leaders of the film industries in Africa, in particular, may start a negotiation with China, not with the hope of replacing the slots that is going to be left as a result of China reducing the American films, but as a way of having a conversation for China to consider films from Africa, because it is really needed. And as we are talking about having a penetration into the other film markets, China shouldn't be the only place where we should look at, having a stake in their film markets, but also that of even America and Europe. But mainly, my concern is that the African states should look at fortifying an African film market. Because on the other hand, if America doesn't have much hold on the or penetration into the film markets of China, what if they could have an alternative? What if they could have an alternative? And alternative may not necessarily mean that they will have to take their films out of the Chinese market and focus entirely on another market. But the alternative would also mean that, okay, in as much as we have our films in the Chinese market, they could also have their films in the African market so that concurrently they can be still making money from a broader place. But then my prayer is not, or my hope is not just a matter of the American market or any other film industry having a stake in our local markets on the continent, but rather there's going to be a negotiation and a leverage where, as you have a stake in our market, we should also have same in your market, provided yes, we meet the standards of quality films that may be expected of us. So these are discussions that I think ought to really be tabled in front of all the film industries, particularly in Africa, maybe beginning with Ghana. We need to really think about how best we can upgrade the quality of our films in all aspects to be able to have a stake in these foreign markets. We can even begin with China, as perhaps this thing is ongoing. Once the conversations are going on, even when our films are not accepted in this year, the opportunity will be open, provided there is a market there. As it stands now, there are a lot of African indigents who are in mainland China for one reason or the other. And I'm sure there are times that they may be yearning to watch films from their home countries. So this is actually an opportunity not just for Africans to have a step or a feet into the Chinese markets, but in all other markets, because Africans are all over the world and therefore will be desiring for some form of entertainment from their home country. So yes, this is really um, a mixed feeling of a mixed feeling towards what is happening in the world at the moment. I like Hollywood films, I must admit. So do I like other films from other countries as well. And I hope perhaps by this development, when we have a discussion with all the film industries all over the world, there will be due considerations for films from Africa as a whole. Yeah, so this is indeed a story that is developing. Soon enough, we may know exactly how many films will be curtailed from entering into the film markets from Hollywood and the repercussions thereof. So yes, this is my story for. I mean, these are my two stories for the day, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion for today. So I would like you to leave your comments or differing opinions that you may have in the comment section below, and let's engage. It's necessary for us to engage on all issue films. Yeah. So thank you once again for joining me for this episode of the Film Mandate. I'm excited that you are still with me in this fourth week, if I must say, of the Film Mandate. Thank you so much, and I will see you tomorrow.